In school, we learn language, mathematics, science, and so on. But no one teaches, no one, how to live happily, how to burn that anger before anger burns you, how to conquer that rage, how to overcome that uncertainty and fear. We let some of these things last too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much of confusion. We wait with glimmering hope for that one magical moment to deliver us from the dark hole we have burrowed ourselves. The deep black hole that opens up in the middle of our chest, and we feel like we are being sucked into it. A sense of being pushed off the cliff. The exact feeling that makes us shut ourselves from the world, curled up in the dark, without any difference between darkness and brightness, between knowledge and ignorance, without feeling hungry or thirsty, simply sleepless or too sleepy. A moment we feel switched off and as if the time stood still. I know how mean, cruel, and unfair life can be. Fear not, my friend. Sometimes the best way through pain, loss, and grief is to find our purpose. We can choose a path to become angrier, less hopeful, a path of shadow and suspicion, or we can choose a different path to steer through hard times and together heal, reform, and unite in a path of hope and light. Recently, I heard, and I'm sure you did too, give people light and they will find the way. Through our Soul Strings community, we are poised to find that light again. Remember, it has been in our darkest moments that we made our greatest progress, that we found light in the dark moment. So together we can and we will learn not only how to build back, but we will build back better and beautiful. Dr. Menaca's Soul Strings community will give you the courage, lift you up, and inspire you to overcome the obstacles. This is a battle we will win and win it together. It is time for we, the Soul String community, to come together, help each other, and hope for a future light to show our way forward and love for one another. My friend, we meet every Saturday at 3:30 British Standard Time, and we look forward to welcoming you each week. So now, who is Menaca and what qualifies her for this work? Right. Dr. Menaca Pothalingam is a healthcare leadership and business coach and a corporate resilience trainer, an author of best-selling Resilience Learned book, a multi-award winning entrepreneur and an international speaker. Menaca is a qualified NLP and hypnosis practitioner. She's got qualifications in educational leadership and has been a lecturer and trainer to dentists in the UK. She draws her inspiration as a survivor of a civil war in her home country, made a life in new land twice, and became a successful dentist. Grew her 6-figure business to 5 times its turnover. Menaca works with professionals and motivated entrepreneurs who want to make a personal or business transformation. She helps improve their performance, productivity, and profit while having a balanced life by managing and overcoming stress, anxiety, fear, disgust, and so on. She coaches, writes, and speaks on how to be resilient in the face of life's unexpected. Menaca has won several awards, such as Iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All at the Women's Economic Forum at Delhi in India in 2019. Also, Migrant Service Entrepreneur Award at the British Parliament in London in 2019. Now, Menaca is sharing her business and life lessons as a coach, a public speaker, and author, from which we have plenty to derive from. And sir, now are we ready? I think we are. We must be. Stay alert. Ladies and gentlemen, over to Dr. Menaca Potulingam.
Thank you so much, Sendil, for those kind words. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And happy Ganesh Chaturthi, everyone who is celebrating that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time for being with us this evening. I have immense privilege in inviting Sobhana Jaya Madhavan to our platform. Her motto is minimalism and kindness. Two great accolades as far as I can see. Her way of thinking is, if you are kind, you find strength in that. And she thinks kind people are strong people. And I couldn't agree more. I met Sobhana last year when we were co-speakers in India, and she has won an award there at the same time as well. Her achievements, awards, and accolades can go on. She is an Associate Vice President of External Relations in Simon Fraser University in Canada. She has a master's degree in social work, and she's multilingual. What stands apart for me is a passion in social service sector. Beginning at the age of 16, becoming the president of Rotaract Club in her hometown, Palakkad, India. Just to mention a few, she has worked with AstraZeneca, Vancouver International South Asian Film Festivals, and #Code. She has received awards awarded as a Best Rotaract President Award at 16 in India, which is a great achievement. Nominated for the British Columbia Medical and Good Citizenship 2015. Awarded the Woman of the Decade Award in Education and Leadership by the Global Women Economic Forum last year. Recognized by Shiromani Institute and in India for Bharat Shiromani Award. And also she has been profiled by DT Hood, which is translating to Sisterhood of South Asian Creatives in Canada, as one of 10 South Asian role models in 2019. Welcome, Sobhana. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to our platform. Over to you to just introduce yourself and say a couple of words, please.
Thank you, Menaca. So lovely to see you again. And the last time we met, we were in Delhi. And here we are today on a Zoom call with people around the world connecting to talk about relationship violence and love. So thank you so much. And first and foremost, congratulations to you for Soul Strings. And just thrilled to see you doing so well and making such a difference in people's lives. Hello, everyone. And I know we are all connecting here from different time zones. And thank you for making the time. And I'm very honored and very touched that so many people have joined Menaca and me today. You know, when someone introduces you, at least for me, I always wonder, who are they talking about? You know, it just brings about mixed feelings because each of those things, you know, go back to certain memories or, you know, they mean something to you. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think I would describe and define myself as a simple human being. I, you know, see the world through quite a simple lens, I would say. But at the same time, you know, I'm profoundly, like many of you, I'm sure, you know, affected by people and events and what goes on in the world, both, you know, in terms of the past and the present. And I think the one thing that people who know me would say is that I wake up every morning and I embrace each day as if it could be my last. And I always ask myself, what could I do today that makes me a better human being? And what can I do today that would touch someone's life? So I try my very best to be a bit of an optimist, a minimalist, and give whatever I have and try to make a difference. So thrilled to be here today and really look forward to this conversation. And I hope it makes all your mornings and afternoons and evenings worthwhile. Thanks, Menaca.
Thank you, Sobhana. Listening to you, I'm like really humbled. You have so immense, so much of knowledge and experience, and you come across so humble. And I think that's something to learn for me. And I'm sure the audience can't wait to hear you speak more as well. Okay, so let me ask you by beginning with, when you hear the words violence in relationships, what comes to mind for you?
That's a very good question to begin with, Menaca. I think what comes to mind for me is actually two words: love and loss. So when you think about relationships, all of us, you know, different things go through our mind. You know, the beautiful relationships, say, between parents and children, or between good friends, you know, who might be divided by continents but still have a deep affection for each other. The relationship between two people who are intimate or in a relationship. And then loss, because when there is violence in relationships, you know, it basically talks about disharmony. It talks about the lost opportunities for two people, you know, to live in a peaceful and harmonious way. It talks about the loss of respect, the loss of dignity, loss of opportunity for us to use our potential to the fullest and make a difference. So I think love and loss are the two words that come to mind, Menaca.
Thank you, Shobhana. That is a really good explanation. I have heard many relationships definitions and also many definitions for violence. So how would you explain it? How would you define relationship violence in particular?
So I think what's interesting about relationship violence is that it does not escape anyone, and there isn't a particular country or culture or religion that is without it. So when we talk about relationship violence, at least from my perspective, we're talking about two things. We're talking about all kinds of relationships, irrespective of gender, irrespective of sexual orientation, or where that individual is. And we're talking about patterns of behavior that is either aggressive, abusive, controlling, and it's something that has a huge negative impact. So there isn't a form, excuse me, there isn't a form of relationship violence that is good or that is productive or that is helpful. Any form of relationship violence refers to a negative interaction between two individuals, which leaves a negative impact on the person who is at the receiving end of the violence.
Sure. Thank you. Because obviously we are becoming more and more aware, and domestic violence in particular has spiked up after COVID-19 according to statistics. So I'm really interested to take your view on it. So why do you think people enter relationships that end up being violent or difficult? And why is it so difficult to get out of it?
So when we look at what's happening during the pandemic, I want to touch on what you just said. The rates of especially domestic violence, which is referred to by many terms: intimate partner violence, spousal violence, dating violence. So these things have gone up in a terrible fashion during the pandemic. Right here in Vancouver, I was on another panel the other day, and one of the social service providers here in Vancouver was saying that their helpline for intimate partner violence and other forms of violence in relationships have gone up by 300% or more just in the city of Vancouver. And we're talking about a first world country where there's a lot of services and supports. So one can imagine what's happening in many other parts of the world where you have a very different context, very few resources, and where there is a heightened level of shame and blame when it comes to things like domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Going to your second question about why do people get into these kind of relationships and why is it so different to get out of it? It's such a complex question, Menaca. So let's start with why do people get into difficult relationships? I think first and foremost is that irrespective of where we come from, who we are, how we look, what we believe in, I think there is a fundamental need in each of us to be loved and to be able to love others. And we still live in a society where there are certain narratives. So a very young person, whether it's, a girl or a boy or a person of any, gender, we grow up, with this notion, a very romantic, idealistic notion. We all want to fall in love. We all want to experience what it is to have another person, look into our eyes and, tell us that they love us or tell us that, we're beautiful. I think that need and that quest, for this soulmate is sort of universal. And then you have what the media tells us, what movies tell us, and what our own cultures tell us. For example, if you watch Bollywood movies, right? There's always this notion of love and this dream world that we all believe that we can be part of. So we grow up with all these narratives, surrounding us. And I think what happens at a young age is that because we're quite idealistic, we're romantic, quite naive, we look for what we want to find. And when we find it, we believe it's everything that we wished for. So we don't see the red flags. So for example, when you fall in love with someone, you don't see the red flags go up when this other person is very controlling, or this other person starts to stalk you. The other person tells you, don't wear makeup. I don't want you to be too attractive to other people. Or tell somebody, you need to tell me where you are every minute of the day. When I call, you must pick up the phone or I'm going to be upset. So when behaviors start to present themselves, because we are so-called in a world of love, we just miss the signs. The other narrative that impacts us is we are told, men are a certain way, women are a certain way. When people love you, they have a right to control you or to be passionate and sometimes hurt you. So what happens is different concepts, get mingled, and there is, I would say, a level of confusion. But because you're in this heightened state of emotionality, you miss it and you just continue in that relationship. And then as you get older, let's say you get married, you have children, it then becomes complicated because now you realize as you get older that this relationship is not a healthy relationship. You're not in a normal relationship. You're not supposed to get hurt when you're loved. But you have so many other people in your life now that it's very difficult for you to sort of uncouple, to leave that relationship, to get divorced or to break up. And then you have this fear that if you do it, you're going to get more hurt. You're going to be seen as an unsuccessful person, someone who has failed in the marriage. You worry about how to pay your bills. You're going to lose everything that you might have built up. So, I can just peel layers and layers in answering this question, and we could be here for 2 hours talking about this. But to just sort of summarize what I've been trying to say here, Menaca, I think at the end of the day, we want to be loved. And when someone comes along and we believe that we are being loved and we start to get hurt, we don't often know what to do about it. And it takes a very long time for us to get out of it. And for some people, they choose or they're forced to stay in that relationship forever and they never get out of it.
Thank you, Sobhana. I couldn't agree more because we are all grow up looking at Cinderellas and looking at Bollywood movies, running around, being in love forever. And I think we grow up thinking that is going to be our life.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, there is also the thing that exactly like you said, that someone else will come and make us whole. Someone else will make us happy. Whereas I think early on, it will be probably interesting and important to know. And if somebody can teach us that happiness only starts and ends with us, and we are responsible. Just to be happy, we don't need someone else to come and fill us. When two happy people or two whole people come together, that's when the magic happens. So going from there, what would you say to anyone who is thinking about starting a relationship? Is your advice different from a young person compared to an older person? Because of course, in today's life, a lot of people, early on, if we saw a few decades earlier, it was mainly young people who were entering the relationships. But even in our communities, it is becoming more and more common. Older generation, older people are getting into relationships. What would you advise them?
Well, I think I'm just sort of laughing because I was just thinking, what's the advice I would have liked when I was 16? Growing up in a small village in Kerala, and in a very different context. I had um, uh, I was just very blessed to have very good friends as a teenager. Both boys and girls, and wonderful human beings, and many of them I'm still connected with, and deeply care about. And I think to young people looking back, I'm 52, so, and with silver strands, you get a little bit of permission to preach to people, right? So I think to a young person, I think what I would say is that, wait, be patient, wait till you actually grow up and you know who you really are, what you want to do with your life, and what kind of person you think would really make you happy. Because just as our brains don't fully develop until we are in our early 20s, right? I think it's really important to give ourselves the opportunity to discover ourselves, and to figure out who we are, travel, meet people of different backgrounds, and really try and define, what's our personal brand, and who is this other person with whom we might have harmony, or a positive good chemistry. And the other thing is, it's perfectly okay to not be in a relationship. I think there's a lot of pressure on young people to date and to find their soulmate. Well, there are a lot of people who are single, who choose to never marry, who are perfectly happy and enjoy their freedom, and lead very good and productive lives. To older people, I guess you're thinking about people in their 40s or 50s or 60s. I think people say in my generation, many of us may have gone through very difficult relationships or marriages, and we might have decided to move on from it. I think the advice would be, don't be bitter. We have one life to live, and we all make our share of mistakes. They're not failures, they're just experiences from which we need to learn. And if, let's say, we were in a relationship or a marriage that turned bitter and toxic or violent or abusive, not everybody, that you meet or you interact with or you reconnect with is going to be that way. And I think it's just important to learn from our experiences, learn from, the difficult experiences we've had. And then when we get into a new relationship, or we muster courage to get involved with somebody, if we choose to really appreciate that individual for who they are, and to make a choice to be with them in a very harmonious way, so that two people can actually be happy.
Thank you so much, Sobhana. I have definitely taken away some tips. I'm sure all the listeners are taking some invaluable tips too. Going
My
from
children would
there.
say, my children would say, don't ask for relationship advice from mom.
Well, we make two of us. I'm not a relationship guru either. When people talk to me and ask me to speak about relationship, I said, that's one subject I don't speak about. So, okay, it makes two of us. So we all agree relationship violence is a pandemic. It continues to hurt us all directly or indirectly. And I think it has been even more pronounced post-pandemic, as we have spoken about. So what can governments, organizations, businesses, and individuals do?
Any social issue, right? Whether it's poverty, whether it's mental health or relationship violence, these, chronic, persistent, wicked social problems are very complex to begin with, right? It's if you look back in time, the reason we have relationship violence can be tied, right, to mythology, to religion, to politics, to all kinds of complex, things. So when we start unpeeling them, what we realize is that every single one of us is impacted by it. Even if I'm not in a violent relationship, the fact that there is violence in our society is going to impact me directly or indirectly. And we see that during the pandemic. So when it comes to solving these problems or eliminating them or trying to do so, it's really critical that individuals, organizations, governments, businesses, everybody, tries to come in and tries to understand the intersectionality. So for example, most children spend considerable amount of time with their family and say in schools, in the kindergarten to grade 12 system. So what happens in the family and what happens in the school system impacts them a lot. So if, in the introduction, someone talked about, we learn subjects when we're young. I don't remember a single talk or a single session on relationships and relationship violence growing up. I came to read about it, hear about it, and through my own personal experiences, became well aware of it at a much later age in life. So I think what's really critical is for people to own their space. If you are a businessman, for instance, you have access to your employees, you have access to resources. So making information available, making support services like a helpline available, or having a policy in your company that says, if you're trying to leave a difficult relationship and you don't have access to, say, counseling, here's, a couple of $100, for you to access so that you can go and see a counselor and you can plan your exit safely from a relationship. Or let's say that, you have been assaulted or you've gone through a traumatic experience. You can take a week off to heal from that experience, get some services and supports so that you can come back to work feeling better. Governments, through policy, programs, legislation, can make a huge difference. So for example, here in British Columbia, where I live, a couple of years ago, police basically were trained and legislation was passed where there's a zero tolerance, for violence in relationships. So the thinking was that, let's say that there's zero tolerance. We're not going to accept that just because you're in a relationship, you might sometimes get hurt. We will not tolerate it. We will take action. We will take the offender to court and we'll try to go for a conviction. So there's a lot of things that we can do as individuals, as groups, businesses, educational institutions. And I think we need to ask ourselves, how am I part of the problem? And how am I part of the solution? So I have two sons. They're 23 and 20. Wonderful young men. We talk about this issue all the time. So yesterday when I asked them, what can we do? My oldest son said, Mom, we can all make better choices and we can teach young people to make better choices. So I think hearing everybody's voice, understanding different perspectives, but collectively saying violence is not okay and we need to do something to stop it, I think will ultimately make a dent in this problem.
Thank you so much, Sobhana. So many tips you have given generously. You being a single mom for two wonderful sons, like you put it, coming from an Asian background, I guess you understand there is a stigma, a taboo, and about relationship breakdowns, and people are reluctant to speak about violence or abuse in their households openly. So as someone who is passionate about these topics, what would you tell those people or those families or that society or the individuals, what would your advice be?
Yeah, so many components to that question. So I'm going to try and and break it down. So yes, I'm a single mom with two wonderful children who are now in their 20s and in university. And without going into all the details, right, in my own life, I was married for 24 years in a relationship that led to the marriage, altogether for 26 years. So from a very young age, I was, a part of a relationship that did not go well and had to end. My own reflections is that, yes, it's a tough decision. And yes, you sometimes lose everything that you worked so hard for. And it might be a very tough road ahead of you. But if you are not happy and you're not healthy, you don't feel safe, and you can't be the best version of yourself, it is worth it to leave it and move on and try to make your life what you want it to be. And I think I am a better version of myself today because of that decision. And I think my children respect me, and they've turned out to be wonderful young men because of that decision that I made. Going into the aspect of, South Asian culture, well, one thing I want to clarify is that violence exists in every culture, but each culture has its own nuances and things that make it a bit unique, from the other. Some cultures, like the South Asian culture, is heavily loaded with blame and shame. When something bad or sad happens, there's a tendency to blame often the victim or the survivor. So if a young woman, for instance, gets sexually assaulted, in many places people would ask, what did she do? What did she wear? And maybe there's a good reason why it happened. And then there is a lot of shame, for that particular thing. Or if somebody was, started to date at a young age, people would say, well, just look at what happened. These young people started to date at a young age, and that's why this particular, incident or bad experience, came about. All I would, say to anybody in any culture is that, there comes a point in our lives we have to think for ourselves, and the earlier we start thinking for ourselves and question the narratives, and the earlier we start reminding ourselves that we always have a choice, no matter what the situation is. So if I'm right now, today, in a situation where I have terrible financial issues and I'm undergoing terrible financial strain, I have a choice. I could move into a place where the rent is cheaper. I could eat differently. I could shop less. I could perhaps sell some of the things, that I have. We always have a choice. In difficult relationships, there's a ton of fear. It's not so much the blame and shame that paralyzes people from leaving difficult relationships. It's actually fear. Fear of getting hurt, fear of having a tough life ahead, and fear of being lonely. These are the things that paralyze people. So I think what's really important is to look out for those people in our life who don't judge us, who love us unconditionally, continue to be there for us, that you could call at 3 a.m. and say, I'm having a tough day. And that other person reminds you how wonderful you are, how beautiful you are, just the way you are. And we need to reach out to those individuals. We need to draw strength from them. But ultimately, we've got to look in the mirror and feel good about who we are and believe in ourselves.
Thank you, Sobhana. It's amazing the way you put it, because I think it starts from self-worth, isn't it? It's understanding we are enough, we are good enough, because a lot of us, imposter syndrome is very, very prevalent, particularly in professionals, even successful people. Ironically, 70% of women have it, whereas 40% of men have it. So it is prevalent in both sexes, but women, I think we take the crown for it. So I think we have to work on that bit for sure. And also you beautifully put it, how important it is to have that support system around you. Because as Jim Rohn puts it, you are the average of 5 people you surround yourself with. So
true.
I always tell, if you don't have any titles, you don't have any marriage, you don't have a penny to the you're in your bank account, who are those 5 people who would still be there as your support system and keep them close and keep them safe? That would be my advice. So hearing from you, I think it is the same point. I'm so amazed like how well and beautifully you put that. So the title is How, Why, and Why, I guess, Violence Replaces Love in Relationships. Can you give 5 tips for our audience how people can try to replace violence with love and how they can go about it?
We can give 500. So we'll do 5. We'll do 5 for today. I think the first and foremost would be to love oneself and take care of oneself. Because when you have self-worth, you have self-confidence, and you believe in yourself and you take care of yourself, you will be able to do that for someone else. Because a lot of times it's a lack of self-esteem, it's a lack of self-worth and self-confidence that makes people become abusive and cruel towards others. So the first one is love thyself. The second one is train oneself to make better choices. Just like learning to ride a motorbike, right? I used to ride a motorbike when I was a teenager and I loved motorbikes. Well, it's not easy to learn to ride a motorbike. You have to have someone to teach you, then you have to have the confidence to get on it, and you've got to love the experience. So it comes with a lot of effort. And I think learning to make choices also is something we have to train ourselves in. We have to look at every situation, every opportunity that presents itself, and ask ourselves, is this going to impact me positively or negatively? And we have to then build that confidence to say no to certain things in life, including saying no to a relationship that might end up hurting you. The third one is, like I said to an earlier question, Menaca, wait, be patient. There is, I believe, a good time, for everything. And for relationships, I think it's very important for people to first grow up, to mature, not just physically, but also, mentally, and to be able to understand the other human being, look out for positives and negatives, and then make a conscious decision. So there's pressure on young people to date, to get married, to have children by the time they are a certain age. I think we should learn to just push back on that and just be patient, wait for the time when we're ready, we're healthy, we're more whole to enter a relationship and be happy in it. The fourth one, I would say, is that to build a strong support system. You talked about the 5 people, in your life that have a huge impact on you. I can tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you, Menaca, if not for those, few wonderful people in my life, family and friends. I have a few friends with whom, I can be just who I am. I know that they don't judge me for the way I talk, for the way I look, for the way I think. And they're not afraid to tell me that they disagree with me, or, that maybe my perspective, is not as deep and broad as it should be. And with these people, you develop strength. So having those connections and network, is very important. The last one, right, I would say is that irrespective on our beliefs and, our value systems and the faith that we might have, I think it's really important, to embrace life, in its fullest, to be grateful, for the little things and the big things in our life. Yesterday, it was raining here in Vancouver. We had torrential rains. And, I decided to go to the post office. And as I was driving up Burnaby Mountain, where Simon Fraser University, where I work is, the rain was just falling, so, strong on my windshield. And, I could see the wind was blowing because the trees were swaying. I was playing music and driving up the mountain. And I was just thinking, how beautiful is this rain? And how blessed I am that I have sight, you know, that I can actually see this rain. I can see the cedar trees swaying, and I'm driving up this beautiful mountain, in the middle of it all. So embracing life, being grateful for things, for the rain, for the flowers, for music, and just getting up in the morning, wanting to live and be the best version of your life goes a long way. So those are my 5 tips.
Thank you, Sobhana. It was lovely. I'm sure all the participants loved listening to those 5 the tips.
Sorry, I write poetry in my free time, so sometimes I can get carried away.
Oh, okay. I should we'll ask you to share some later on. I would love to hear that and see that. Okay, so I think summarizing, I think it is valuable lesson for all the parents as well, not to put too much pressure on our children and the youngsters and our friends and families, not to take a step back and let them be who they want to be, and do things and go into relationship as and when they think it's fit and with whom they think it's fit. I think it is also important. And like you said, I couldn't agree more. I wouldn't be who I am today without the support system of my family and my friends. I always say I am the queen for falling. I had many failures, many falls in my life. And I wouldn't be here without those supportive people around me who guided me, who was lending a hand to hold me, and also tell me when I'm wrong. They wouldn't think twice to tell, no, I don't think that's the right way to think or right way to say it or right way to do it. And I think it's really important to have those people whom you trust around you to say that. And I can say the same, and I can, like exactly like you said, it was no wonder we get along well, because it's exactly for me, it's freedom is one of my very important value for me. I should be able to say what I say and do what I do and be who I am. And that's, I think it's important for everyone around them.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. It has been such a great privilege and honor to have you. One last question from me, and then I will open it up for audience, is what has been your experience of Soul Strings, and is there any suggestions you would give us to take forward?
Oh, thank you, Menaca. I mean, first and foremost, what a blessing, to be here today and have this conversation, in a relaxed, honest, and friendly fashion. And it's just wonderful to see different people joining us too. I just think, Menaca, I think you have done something that you're passionate about, and you come at it in a very authentic, caring way. And the only thing I would say is keep doing this, because it'll have a huge impact, on people. And we never know, right? When we say something, it might resonate with somebody miles away from you, and it might just make them, wonder or come to a solution for a different, problem, that they are. I asked a friend of mine, why do you think there's violence in relationships? And the response was, with time, everything changes. People change, situations change, expectations change, and then it leads to a situation where when 2 people are not harmonious and they don't embrace that change, then you have discord, and you have violence or hate, in that relationship. And I was really thinking about it, right? Because I thought it was not only philosophical, but it's so true. We all change with time. And I think for me, Soul Strings is about giving people an opportunity to talk about all kinds of topics, but to allow ourselves to change for the better, and allow ourselves to, acquire, different perspectives and skills to be better human being and make a choice to engage with people in a positive way. So congratulations to you. I think everyone should give you a big round of applause.
Thank you so much, Sobhana. That's very kind of you. As you say, I think you can only take one step at a time, right? And all we have to do is be a better person today than yesterday, and tomorrow we have to think the same. And I think that's all we all can do. And I'm so blessed to our paths crossed, and here we are today on this platform speaking about such an important topic. Thank you so much. I will open the questions for the audience now. Either you can raise your hand and unmute and come on the video and ask yourself, or if you want to be anonymous, please send the questions to Swati privately and she will pass it on.
It's a difficult topic, and I just want to acknowledge that there might be people right now on this call who are going through difficult relationships. This might be a bit of a trigger, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I think by just asking a question anonymously or indicating who you are can just lift a burden from your heart.
Okay, so I have a friend who keeps attracting the same type of domestic violence partner. What can I advise her and how could I help her? So far, 3 marriages of getting beaten up as such.
Well, thank you for asking the question. And I think it's a question that many of us at different points in time have asked, either because situations we're in or someone else in. So why does someone attract violence? It's a complex question. So let me first start with the individual who is in that violent relationship getting hurt. A lot of the times it can boil back to upbringing, messages they've heard over time, some strong, cultural expectations. So for instance, in some families, in some communities and cultures, there's a very strong message to all people, all genders that, you must get married. And no matter how that marriage turns out, you must stay in it, even if you get hurt. So when you've heard this over and over again, and now you've grown up into this individual and you get hurt, you believe that you should not do anything about it. Number two, you might have low self-esteem, you might have low self-worth. You believe that you're not worthy of love and respect, and that you are deserving of those beatings or those hurt. A lot of times for the individual who's getting hurt, one, not knowing that, strongly not understanding that this is not okay. But number two, feeling that you're not good enough for something better makes them continue to stay on in those relationships. And then eventually when they leave, they feel terrible and they feel vulnerable. And then the next person comes along and shows a little bit of love or a little bit of caring. And then they get involved with that person, and then the vicious cycle repeats itself. What would be most helpful for this individual is someone who cares about them or knows them quite well should really confront them with the facts in a loving way. Show them that there is a pattern of behavior. You are in 2 relationships or 3 relationships. Let's take a look at what happened here. What that other person did to you, what you let the other person do to you, and what you did to yourself. Help them recognize the pattern. Help them acknowledge this is not a positive, normal pattern, and then try to encourage them to work with a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist who can help them get out of that vicious cycle. I hope your friend stays well.
Thank you so much, Sobhana. Just a question privately. What we need to include in our sons, or how do we teach our sons as parents so that they turn out to be good individuals and not involved in violence, basically?
So, violence affects all genders. But if you look at statistics, you look at homicide rates, it's definitely higher for women and girls. And the offenders are usually men in these statistics when you dig deep. I have 2 sons. And so I will tell you what I have done. I'm not claiming to be, the best parent or award-winning parent. But what I will tell you is that there are a lot of things that I think I have done, which has made it very clear to them that being violent, being aggressive, or being physically abusive is not what being manly is all about, or being a man is all about. In fact, a good man, a good human being is someone who chooses to treat others with respect and who chooses to be kind, who chooses to love and chooses to give. So those messages, have been told over and over again. I've also, over the years, made sure that my sons get a very clear message. We're all equal. We're all blessed with gifts. We all have our flaws, but we're all equal. And so giving that message of equality from a very young age. If you have daughters and sons, expecting both of them to do household chores, expecting both of them to learn to cook, to clean, expecting both of them to treat people with respect. And when they don't do it, giving them a consequence, and helping them understand that this is not okay and being consistent with it throughout their life helps them grow up into young men who then have these clear messages and there's no confusion. I was talking to my younger son yesterday. Menaca, I want to quickly share this. He's 20 years old. And I asked him, I said, hey, why do you think, there's violence in relationships? And he said, Mom, some people grow up in situations where love and violence are intertwined. The person that they love are very loving, and the person that they love are also very violent. And then it gets mixed up. So as parents, we need to be very clear what's okay, what's not okay. We need to try and role model healthy relationships or talk to them about it so that when they grow up, they know what a loving, healthy, romantic relationship looks like.
Thank you so much, Sobhana. I think it's a very important topic. And I think when you're in a relationship, I guess it's also important to know that sometimes it's okay not to be okay, and voice it out and share it with other people and seek help and get advice. Because I think sometimes we grow up thinking we have to solve all our problems ourselves and we can't ask for help or advice. I think that is another thing which is really important in some communities more than others. I think I'm immensely grateful for you to be there. I know particularly with the time zone difference, it's early morning for you and you still made the effort to be there. And I can't tell you how grateful actually I am. I will just mention the second speaker and then pass it on to Frank to give the vote of thanks. So the next speaker is going to be Meera Bahu. She is a specialist CBT psychologist from London, and she would be talking about stop and think suicide and suicide prevention. That would be our next topic, and I think it is a timely topic because I work with different organizations, particularly post-COVID, and during COVID, we had several incidents, which is heartbreaking to everyone, children, adults. I always say mental health issues are one thing. It's very democratic. It doesn't, choose anyone, from celebrities to professionals to children to housewives. It doesn't spare anyone. So it's really, really important topic. I can't wait to have Meera Bahu come and speak about that. Thank you so much once again, Sobhana. I hand it over to Frank to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Menaca, for this wonderful time and session and this platform that you have created. The number of audience shows how much they love you and how much they are stringed. The souls are stringed together. And it gives me immense pleasure on behalf of the Soul String to thank dear speaker, Sobhana Jaya Madhavan, with so many awards behind her. I'm so humbled the way she spoke. She was so cool and complacent, and to speak about replacing violence and love in the relationship, love and loss. She spoke about not to have disharmonies, not to have bitter experiences, but counted as not counted as failures, but counted as experience. That was a very good thing. And the 5 points which she spoke, which was very touchy: loving oneself, self-worth and self-confidence and self-esteem, training oneself, wait for the good time, to have patience, especially the young ones, physically, mentally, and be matured, and building a strong support system, which many of us don't do. We keep it to ourselves and get depressed, and embrace life, be grateful and thankful for what we are. And I just want to conclude with that. And then we'll give a clap to ma'am once I finish with this. One more thing which came into my mind was loving our spouse or our friends, or esteeming them more than ourselves. I think that will make it more better. And then the other point which I thought is forgiveness. In fact, I didn't raise up that question, how long can you take the nonsense? And when you cut it off, maybe you can answer it later after the time is finished. The after party, after session party, maybe. How long do you wait, and when do you cut off the relationship, and how long can you take the nonsense, and how long can you forgive a person, 70 times 7 or 100 times or 1,000 times, whatever it is. So we are very thankful to you, ma'am Sobhana, and I'm so happy and privileged to give this vote of thanks to you. And also I'm happy that you are our neighbor, like my mom is from Thrissur and you're from Palghat. So I take pride in that also. So let's put our hands together and give a big clap for Sobhana ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I can't believe we both said exactly at the same time. Thank you so much, Frank. Of course, you guys can stay on and join us on the after party. Until then, so hopefully we will see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Until then, stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.